Good morning. Is this on? Testing, testing. I'm a whistler, so if you don't quiet down, I'm going to treat you like my junior achievement classes, and I'm going to whistle really loud. So thank you. Thank you for coming. We're really excited to have everyone here today, and excited because there are some faces I don't know. And that always gets me really ramped up, because this work that we're about to engage in is complicated. It's hard, but we can do hard things. And it's interconnected. And so I'm always excited to see people who I haven't seen at the table before. So welcome to our tried and true. Welcome to our new folks. And we have a special addition to the training today. We have Rotarian grant investigators. These are the volunteers who are going through a deeper training with us to understand how our grant criteria work, just like you are. But they'll be sitting in on the grant investigations. So I would just like to see how many Rotarians who are here who intend to be grant investigators. Awesome. Are you all from Traverse City Club? Anybody from not Traverse City? Okay, great. Wonderful. Well, my name is Becky Ewing. I am the Executive Director of Rotary Charities. I've been in this seat less than a year, but I've been at the organization for 11. So I know the organization well and love it even more. So I'm really, really happy you're here. And we're going to get started because we're already running a little late, but this podium is not great, not conducive. But here's what we're here to learn today. We're going to give you a little introduction to Rotary Charities. We're going to, Tori's going to come up and talk a little bit about SurveyMonkey Apply, which is the online grant application system we use. We're going to talk about grant categories and criteria, so both Freya and I will be talking about those. And then we're going to do a breakout session, and during the course of the morning, you're going to understand if you are here, who's here interested in applying for a grant in the fall. All right, so pay attention. You're going to be able to probably discern which breakout group you're going to be in, depending on what kind of funding you're hoping to apply for. And then we're going to, in those breakout sessions, one of the things, if you don't know me, you might not know this, but I love to connect people. So we're going to spend a little time connecting, because even though you might be competing for the same grant type, there's plenty to go around, A, and B, you might meet someone who is also interested in the same issue. And we're hoping that that magic of connection might bring some additional enlightenment to what you're looking for. So we're really excited about the connecting. I'm super excited about the connecting part. So how many of you have gotten a Rotary Charities grant before? Less than half. Of course, we have staff here and Rotarian investigators. However, usually it's a lot more. So if you have questions about Rotary and where we got our money and the history, we're not going to spend time on that today, but I'm super happy in the breakout to start with a little introduction. And Freya can do that too if you have deep questions about Rotary Charities and how we became. We've gotten feedback that, you're spending too much time talking about Rotary Charities. We just want to understand how to get the money. So, so just listening to feedback, we're going to adapt. But I just wanted you to know I'm so excited to talk about our funding in this way. Over $60 million of grants since the beginning of our foundation. And that is to our 5 counties. So that's a big number, and I think it's just a stunning number. So what are we talking about today, and how did we get here? So I'm going to spend just a tiny bit of time talking about this. And our foundation has always been interested in increasing its impact. Our board hard drives to the impact question. They want to make sure that every dollar has the maximum amount of impact possible in our region. And so in the beginning, we were a pretty traditional grant maker. We did capital grants, which is bricks and mortar kinds of stuff, land acquisition, that sort of thing. We also did some program grants. You know, 1 year, in fact, when I was on the board at Junior Achievement, we got a grant, and it was for a program, an existing program. So some kind of traditional sorts of grants. Then what the board realized, and this was about maybe 15 years ago, was, you know, we've helped to build all these buildings in our region and fund programs, but wait a minute, if the nonprofits aren't strong and have the skill set that they need and the capacity they need to be really effective and efficient, those buildings don't matter. It's what's happened inside the building, right? The brick and mortar doesn't really matter. It's what happens inside. So at that point in time, our board and the staff at the time, which was only basically 2.5 people, decided that they would experiment. And the other thing about our board, impact, but also innovation. They're a risk-taking board. They take conservative risks sometimes a little less conservative, but our board is always innovative. In fact, our former director, Marcia Smith, used to say, we fight above our weight class. And we do. We don't give away that much money. It's about $1.2 to 1.5 a year. And that sounds like a lot, but it's not. I wish we had 10 times that much, because it's a limited amount of money. And so they started experimenting with capacity building. And it was pretty much the technical and operational capacity building of board governance, fundraising, marketing, communications, database development, all that stuff. And what happened was they also, during this period of time, started giving multiple year grants, because here was the learning. Our board is very much about learning as well. And they learned that capacity building doesn't happen in a single year. Organizations need more time to build capacity. So that was when they also started multiple year grant making. I hit the button too soon. So the next evolution really became even more robust grant making strategy in the last the last 3 to 4 years now. We've been shifting, and you'll learn a lot more about that from Freya, into more of a systems-based grant-making model, which you'll learn more about. I know it's a mouthful. But we also, and again, the board questioning, how can we increase our impact? And so at the sort of the leading edge of what was happening, we're always looking at the national landscape of philanthropy. And one of the trends that we were seeing, some of these organizations and foundations were actually taking a slice of their assets, their investments, and taking them off a traditional investing, stocks and bonds, and investing them directly into communities. So we actually took $3 million out of our portfolio that's basically, and I love this, I don't know who came up with this, it wasn't me, so I'm not going to take credit for it, took that money off Wall Street, and we're putting it on Main Street. So really excited about that. We also have been doing leadership development for a decade, and through North Sky Nonprofit Network, which if you've heard of North Sky, raise your hand, okay? And a lot of that has been around individual coaching, peer learning circles, and our coach and senior consultant is here with us today. I see her in the crowd, Lucille Chrisman. If you haven't heard of Lucille, yes, she's magic. You'll hear that, and she is. But she has coached probably over 125 people in our region in a very deep dive, and I'm the result of one of those. And it really, truly is a transformative experience in leadership development. And then we're also about connecting. So I talked about that sort of connection capital that we have. We're connected in community, but we're connected beyond. So in the regional level, state level, and national level, we have connections with our fellow philanthropists and innovators throughout the country. So looking forward to connecting to those resources as well. And I mentioned this, we have a new focus. So last year, or last fall, was our first big pivot into the systems-based grant-making philosophy. And we experimented with it. We've had some great learning already about what's possible when people come together and deeply collaborate and try to get upstream on a wicked, complex issue. So we're going to be talking more about that today. Did I miss anything, guys? I can't read my notes, so okay. So when our board first started shifting our vision and mission statement, it was in 2015. And it used to be that our vision and mission, our vision has always been around a healthy, thriving region. But the mission has shifted pretty significantly to from individual organizations and helping make them stronger and better meet their missions, to really getting at helping you all come together to address some of our most wicked problems and develop community assets that are available to everyone. So what are our strategies? It's a big thing. And I would say, for those of you working in organizations with vision and mission statements, how many of you have that sort of thriving region, whether it's economic prosperity or health and well-being, or how many of you have something like that in your vision or mission statement? See how much we share? So cool. So here's how we're deploying what we have to help affect that change. And we're using our money, and I talked a little bit about the grant funding, but also impact investing. And I'm happy to talk in our assets breakout on, sorry, I'll make sure I'm not missing anything, about that impact investing. We have a strategy. We've deployed 1.5 million. And so I'm happy to talk about that. We're still developing the strategy for what's the remaining 1.5. And learning, we've always been a funding organization. We've also always been a learning organization, but this is learning on steroids, what we're doing now. So we've leveraged, for instance, what Lucille has done on the individual level to develop a leadership learning lab, which is a deep cohort-style, year-long experience for, in our region. We've done it all across northern Michigan, sort of knuckles north to the bridge, over to Alpena and Manistee. And we're partnering with the Fry Foundation. We have significant funding from the Fry Foundation. We also have funding from 11 community foundation partners. And again, Lucille is helping with that, and she's the lead facilitator. We also have Colleen and Freya, who are helping that program as well. In the Grand Traverse region, we ran 4 cohorts last year, not in Grand Traverse, and we learned a ton, and the results were stunning. The outcomes were amazing. 95% of people said it was one of the highest quality professional development experiences they'd ever had. But we took what we learned and we applied it to Grand Traverse. We're partnering with the Regional Community Foundation to develop leadership learning, and we put the word out. And what we want to do here, those are all focused on nonprofit leaders, but what we knew we wanted to do here was really try to engage other sectors, because solving wicked problems doesn't happen in the nonprofit sector alone, right? So we had 15 slots. We had 30 people apply, and we have 30 participants in this group. And it's soup to nuts. It's business, it's nonprofits, it's business, it's local units of government, and I know we have some local unit people here today. Where are they? Yes, yes. And so business, local units of government, and we have some tribal representation in that group. And who am I missing? I'm missing a sector. Am I? Anyway. Great group of people, and they've only met twice, but we're already starting to see some real excitement around that. So watch for that if it's something you're interested in. Regardless of where you are in your organization or community, we would love to have you as part of the next cohort. And then North Sky Nonprofit Network, a lot of you raised your hands. We're sort of in a transition time with North Sky. you may have noticed some of that, but we're also deciding how we best focus our resources. So we're doing kind of a systems-based analysis of how people build capacity. So we're in a transitional year. But last year we shipped all of our technical and operational learning stuff to NMC through Extended Ed, and we're providing a grant for that to happen. And then we also, how many of you have applied for and or gotten a Macaca grant for arts and culture? Okay, just a couple. But that administration is going to be moving to the Arts Collaborative. So we're really excited about that. So we're sort of peeling off the things that will allow us to focus just really intensely on our vision and mission. How many of you attended the David Peter Stroh systems thinking 2-day? Deb did, great. It's got a couple, Terry and Lucille, and I know a lot of our staff were there. Another deep learning from a national expert. So we're doing lots of new styles of learning and new subject areas. And then connecting, we've always connected. So we're looking forward to raising that bar as well. So, sorry I didn't pull that up. So here are our 4 categories. Okay, what about the money, Becky? Here's the money. Sorry. I know you're all like, what? I don't want to hear all this stuff. So we have 4 categories, and we're going to do a deeper dive on this in just a little bit. But I just want you to know, so we have the Assets for Thriving Communities pot and the Systems Change Accelerator pot. Those are our 2 big grant types. And then we have a rolling deadline and smaller amounts available for our Changemaker Fellowship and our seed grants. So you're going to get a lot more detail there. Any questions before I hand the mic over to Tori to talk about how you actually get online and do the tech stuff? Great. Great. Well, I'm going to hand it over to Tori. Tori hasn't been with us a year yet, but we're close. And Tori is our Manager of Strategic Communications. And she is going to talk a little bit about what the screens look like and how to get in and try to simplify that part of the process for you.
Thanks, Becky. You'll have to bear with me because I've been fighting a terrible allergy attack, so I'll try not to sneeze while I'm being filmed, and hopefully you can hear me well. So raise your hand if you've used SurveyMonkey Apply to apply for a grant. Great, a lot of people in the room. So I even have some useful information for you today. Okay. Oh, sorry. Becky took my clicker. Thanks, I need the laser. So we're actually going to go back. So you can find. So we're hoping to open the applications by June 17th. So that's coming up soon, and you'll be able to find a link to apply on SurveyMonkey Apply on our website, rotarycharities.org. We're launching a new website soon, so I didn't put up a direct URL to where you can find it on our current website because we're going to have these slides available online, so you'll be able to see everything that Becky shared with you and everything that I'm sharing with you. You can reference it there. So you can find the application link on rotarycharities.org, and also our direct link with SurveyMonkey Apply is rotarycharities.smapply.io. So when you go to that link, this is what you'll see. This is the first page you'll come to. And so on this page, you can kind of scroll down and you'll see each of our 4 grant areas, and you can click to learn more about them. And then when the application is open, this is already there. When the application's open, when you click through for more information, you'll be able to apply that way. This is also the page where you log in or where you register. So we're going to talk a little bit about registration because we have a new requirement for those of you who may already be in the system. So registering for the first time. So in the past, it was possible to register as an individual or register as an organization. We have a lot of folks in the system who are registered as individuals, and that's okay. You're going to have to go in and change that, though, and I'll tell you how in a second. But for those of you who are registering for the first time, be sure to select register as an organization right here. If you're planning to apply for a grant as a collaborative, or a network, which many folks who are applying in the Systems Change Accelerator category are doing, you'll want the fiscal agent should register their organization first, and that's how you'll go through the application process. So when you're registering, when you register as an organization, for those of you who are part of a larger organization that you have maybe you have grant writers who work in different program areas, you want to make sure only one account. So for all of this basic information here, make sure that whoever is the main contact for your grants at your organization will become the primary administrator for your organization on SurveyMonkey Apply. And one last note, please be sure to save your username and password. We're not able to help you recover that information, and you have to go through SurveyMonkey Apply. So we can't help you, unfortunately, if you lose that info. So please try to save it, and do not create more than one account for your organization. So for those of you who are already registered as an individual, likely many of you who raised your hands, because I think most folks on the back end are currently registered as individuals, you will have to create an organization to link to your individual account. So in order to do that, when you log on, I'm sorry, this is kind of small, but you'll be able to see it when you look at the slides online. When you log into SurveyMonkey Apply and you come to your individual account, you go up to the corner and click on My Account, and you'll come to a page that looks like this. It will have your initials, not Victoria Craig's initials. And you'll go to click Set Up an Organization down here at the bottom, and then you'll be linked to that organization. So raise your hand if you are with an organization and you maybe have multiple program administrators and you might apply for grants in different areas. Okay, and what about those of you who may apply for a collaborative grant with a network? Okay, so some folks in the room. So for these uses, we have the ability to create teams. And so when you create a team, many people can log in into this team and edit an account. So in order to create a team, when you go into the back end, you'll be able to click on, when you're in as a program administrator, only program administrators can do this. You'll go to Manage Organization over here at the top corner, and then you'll select Teams on that page and then create a team, and be sure to create a team name that's useful to you. So either reflective of that particular internal program or that is the name of your network. And then in order to add members to that team, again, it's only the primary administrator or anyone else they designate as an administrator for the account who can add members to the team. So you'll go in, again, to Manage Organization, and then you'll select members, and then you can add members. And be sure to click down here to notify them via email. And it's important when you're doing that others do not log in to create an individual account without getting an email from you that they'll be added to your team, because they won't be able to access your application. So always wait on an invitation through SurveyMonkey Apply from the primary administrator if you are going to be a collaborator on a grant. And one last thing, we've had a few people log into SurveyMonkey Apply. The system is really great. It saves your work as you go, and then you log in and you're like, where's my application? And it's totally terrifying. So we have a tip for you. You may be logged in as an individual who should be logged in as an organization. So when you log into your main page, this is what your main page will look like, and you see no applications. You're like, oh my God, I have to call Rotary Charities. But really, all you have to do is go over here and toggle between your name and your organization's name. So again, these slides will be available online, and there are great FAQs on SurveyMonkey Apply's site that we have linked to on our site that you can go to if you have questions. And you can always call us. Unfortunately, we can't do much on your back end, so we want to be sure that you have all that information so that you can go in and make these changes. Who has questions? Okay, I'm going to come to you so we can catch you on the mic.
So Tori, you mentioned that this is going to be up on the 17th, and the seed grants are due on the 15th. So how do we handle that?
That's a good question. So our seed grants and Changemaker Fellowship are available on the 15th of every month. So those applications are already live on the platform and will continue to be live. The grants that become available hopefully on June 17th are the Assets for Thriving Communities grant and the Changemaker Fellowship grant. And those are our 2 grant categories that are open once per year. Does that help? Oh, I'm sorry. Assets for Thriving Communities, yes. There's another question. Okay.
Hi. So you mentioned that you needed the fiscal agent to sign up first. If there are organizations that are already in the system and you want to add them, and you're going to be the fiscal agent and you want to add them to, is that possible? Or do they have to become a whole new organization within the system?
So I'm just learning about this and experimenting. I think that the thing to do would be to go in where you're adding members here. And when you see this form, you're just going to put in that person's name and email, whoever your contact is at that organization, and they will get an invitation to join the team. So that should go in through their main account in SurveyMonkey Apply. So that's all you need to worry about, is just to add their email into the member of your team. Does that make sense? Okay. Did you want to add something, Becky?
I just wondered, you said something about make sure it's the administrator who signs in. And what do we mean by administrator? Is that the grant writer? Is it the executive director?
Yeah. So that's the language that they use on SurveyMonkey Apply, the primary administrator for the account. And so because organizations should only have one SurveyMonkey Apply account, they should have the person, whoever is the main contact for grants at their organization, for the whole organization, to log in as the primary administrator. And that's just the limitation through SurveyMonkey Apply. Any other questions? Okay, great. I think Becky is back. Here you go.
So that's just to clarify, Tori. So that's the person who's going to get the notification that you've moved on to the next level, or sorry, we're done.
And one more important thing about that administrator designation versus a member, members can log in to edit an application. Only administrators can create or submit an application, and they will receive all the notifications going through the process.
Wonderful. Any lingering questions for Tori? I'm glad that these guys are technology adept, because I'm really not. So we're going to talk about the 2 big grant categories that we have. And that is Assets for Thriving Communities and Systems Change Accelerators. And those are the 2 larger grants that will happen and are due in August. We've moved up our deadline a little bit. So, and then just FYI, you've been hearing the word Changemaker Fellowship and seed grants. And if you're not familiar with those 2 categories, you'll learn a little bit more today. But then if you are interested solely in those, then go to those grants are intended to sort of get you ready for one of the 2 big grants, or do a deep learning in one of the 2 big grant categories. So hopefully that'll be clear. We can answer any questions when we get ready to break out. So the Assets for Thriving Communities grant is under my purview. We will have a new person who we're going to be adding. We're going to be not adding a staff, but we've been short-staffed for the last year. So we're going to be adding a person for whom this category and the impact investments will be their primary purview. So, but in the interim, you will talk to me about Assets for Thriving Communities. So this is really, this is sort of like our capital and program grants. So bricks and mortar, land acquisition, improvements, and then also really great programs. And really the intent is to help to build those community assets that are available to everyone, or make an existing asset more widely available. So the other part to this that's not up here is that sometimes we're working with a special population, a special needs population, and it's a specific program. And the reason this is fresh on my mind is because one of the grants we gave last year was to the Arts for All program. which provides all kinds of cultural learning, artistic opportunities to people with disabilities, youngsters all the way to people my age and beyond. So in this category, you can apply for up to $100,000. When we have a conversation one-on-one, I'll help you navigate what is an appropriate ask. So don't just come in with the idea that you're going to apply for and get $100,000. We'll have a conversation about that, because the role of the sort of this program officer, so myself and Freya, really is to help you navigate and set you up for success if you're a fit for our foundation. That's one of our big jobs. And so if the staff people think that you're going to be a good fit for our organization's funding, then our role is to really help you understand and submit a great application. So on this grant type, we require at least 50% of the total project cost, and as a match, so we don't ever pay for the full freight on that. But that can be a mixture of cash and in kind. I would tell you in this category, the more cash, the better. Not necessary in the other categories, but the more cash, the better. And you can ask for a duration of that funding. You could spread it out. You could use it all in 1 year. You could spread it out over 3 years. So whatever makes sense for you. But it's not $100,000 every year for 3 years. It's $100,000 total, max. Our new deadline is August 26th. We're doing this so that you all can have a great Labor Day. And we want to make sure we're fully staffed and on board. There have been, days that I'm the only one in the office, and don't feel bad if you're calling on the last day. Is it due at 5 or at 11:59 p.m.? I get that question every year. It's 11:59. And so the first thing we'll do is the board and staff will do a first review. And what we do is independently review that. We make the recommendation. So this is the first hurdle. Think of it that way. And we independently make a recommendation to advance this so that we can review it. Or at that point, it's not a good fit. And we'll deny it at that point. So this is our winnowing down opportunity. And so when we come together in that board meeting the first Thursday of October, we get to see what everyone's recommended. And this is really interesting. So if board and staff said deny at this point, we don't, we might talk about why so that we can give you feedback on why. If we say move it on to the next level, we'll just move it on to the next level. But if there's disagreement, and sometimes there is, it's a really interesting conversation at the board level. But as staff, what we're listening for from the board is, why don't you want to move it forward? What feedback can we give this applicant so they can come back maybe if this is a good fit for our foundation, and we can give them specific feedback on how to improve next time. So you will get a call from us to, God, it's like the doctor's calling instead of the nurse, right? Damn. But so we will do a direct call. We want to have a one-on-one conversation with you if you're denied at this point, or if you're denied at the end. So you will get a call, right, Pam? Yeah. And we're going to be as specific as we can as why the board denied it. And then we take, from early October until late November, we're going to be scheduling, for those that move forward, we're going to be scheduling a grant review. And Freya says, it's not an investigation, Becky. So we used to call it an investigation, but I think that was like struck terror in the hearts of people. It's like, oh, is there going to be a light bulb over my head? So this is from a basis of genuine curiosity about your proposal. It's an hour-long meeting with your team, and then the board and the staff typically who reviewed that the first go-around. And then we'll have these lovely, raise your hand again if you're here for volunteer training. We'll have Rotarian volunteers in these as well. So we're not grilling you. We're just trying to find out tell us more. Tell us more. This sounds interesting. So that's the intent of that. And if during the review process, we're capturing questions that staff and board have, we're going to share those with you before you come. So you'll have a chance to prepare for at least what's on our minds as we review it. Questions? Yeah?
In terms of advancing projects, you like have a numeric goal, how many you advance? And number two, when you're doing your screening, is it more of a perfunctory screening in terms of completeness, or is it a philosophical review? What's done at that level?
Great question. So the first one is it a sort of a perfunctory review? Is it complete application? If not, we're going to toss it out. Or is it a little more in depth at that first stage? And it's more in depth. So we're reading the entire application. We're using a scoring matrix that we use that's really more of a general guidance. We're trying to standardize where we can, but there's a lot of art and heart in this work, in addition to a scientific score, right? So that's that first sort of level of review. And then your other question was? Yeah, great question. So do we look for a certain number of applications to forward? And no. It depends on how many we get, and I won't know until August 26th, really, who's coming in. I mean, we'll have a good idea because you have to do a pre-grant meeting. And it's basically, is it a good idea and is it a good fit for our foundation? And we're going to look at it. The meat of the work and the decision making happens in December, and I was just going to talk a little bit about that. And that is when we've done all the investigations, we have all the feedback, we prepare the board packet, and on December 5th is that first Thursday, the board comes together. We'll have the Rotarians who reviewed that particular grant do a little report out, like a 3 to 5 minute report out to the board. So the board hears the review from everyone. And then they go into a closed session to make the final decisions. And with the exception of one in the last 11 years, we always have more requests than we have funding. Probably the same this year. The other thing is that the board has a really tough job when it gets down to, well, we're going to nick this one, we're going to fund this, So that's all the board. So staff is there just to support. We've been in all the meetings, and yeah. Freya.
I just wanted to mention in response to your question about how do we score, that we are going to be going over the criteria that we use. It's going to happen at the end, though, after we've talked about all the categories. So you'll see exactly the things we're looking for in all the applications. And we can talk in depth in the breakouts, too, in a little more detail.
Great. Other questions? Yeah. Hey.
The pre-grant meeting requirement, is that done before you register? Is that done after you've registered and you've had a chance to look at? When is that?
Before, right? Pre-grant? You have to have a pre-grant conversation to get in? Or no?
Well, I mean, the first question. So the very first question on the applications will say, have you had a pre-grant conversation? And if you say no, then it won't let you go any further. So, yeah.
Yeah. So we're going to actually we've set aside some days. We're trying to get a little more efficient about pre-grant meetings because, as you can imagine, we get a lot. So we're going to have a schedule of times when Freya and I are available, and you'll be able to sign up for a time slot today if you'd like. So other questions? Great questions. Yeah, Abby.
Oh, thank you. So if you have had a pre-grant meeting, obviously like you and I have had one in the past, do you need to have a new one for every, say I applied for the Changemaker Fellowship, and also, the systems change? Do you need two? Do you need one?
Yep, you need, so Abby it was a Sea Grant awardee, and we had a great pre-grant conversation, and she was funded. Yes, so if you're coming in for a different grant type, or even a new Sea Grant, we'd need to have another conversation. And we like to do these in person, but if you're traveling from the hinterlands, we're also, or even here and just busy, we can do it on the phone. So whatever suits you. Great. What's that? Oh, I can. Freya can't. So Freya's are just a little more complicated. So she wants to have her. Yeah, she'll talk about hers, but it's typically an hour. Could be less. Freya's are a little bit longer because it's complicated. So it's complex. It's complex. It's complex. Yeah, we're going to learn about complex in just a sec. So this is just a beginning of a checklist. We're trying to give you as much information as we can up front so you can either see yourselves in our grant program or not, and kind of self-select. So here are just some of the things that we're coming up with. Are you ready for an assets grant? So do you know your project's needed, and how do you know your project's needed? Is it going to be widely available to the public? Or will it expand an existing asset so it's more widely available? So for instance, we got a grant request in for a playground at a private school with the intent of everybody can use the playground when our kids aren't on it. It's like, probably not going to be a good fit for us. So that's kind of, a real world example of why we had to say no to that grant. You've consulted with project beneficiaries, and they've shaped your approach. So if you're in a community, have you done a community engagement process? Do you know what your community is hoping for to make their community more thriving and vital? Is it a program? For instance, the Arts for All. They're talking to kids who they're serving. They're talking to the teachers who are teaching those kids. They're talking to the artists they bring in. And so they really had a great sort of 360-degree approach to that. Do you have your match either secured or pending? You'll see a place on the budget where you could say, we've asked this foundation, individuals and donors for this much money. None of it's come in yet. That's fine. But that kind of tells us you have a strategy. So, and you need at least 50%. So, and then if you're going to be sharing an asset with other partners, do you have a way that sort of formalizes the work between the partners? And so do you have a written memorandum of understanding or a partnership agreement? Support letters, meh. Anybody can write a support letter. We're not that interested in support letters, but something more concrete is really helpful and will strengthen the grant application. And then have you had a pre-grant with me? So questions about that? And we'll get into more depth in the breakouts. So this is my breakout, FYI. Pardon me? Yeah, great question. So the question was, do you do matching grants? And we would actually call that a challenge grant. So can you use our money to say, for every dollar you give us, Rotary Charities will give us 2? Yep, we do that. We love that. And if it's helpful for your campaign, it's really not going to change whether or not you get the money. But if it's really helpful for you to have that as an incentive, yeah, we love that. And then all you have to do is document it. So here are the donors, here's how much we raised, and then we can cut the check. Yeah. Other questions? Great. Well, I'm going to move us along. I'm going to bring up Freya. This is her grant category. So Freya Bradford.
Okay, so we're going to make a little bit of a shift here. We're going to have to use our brains a little bit more and kind of open our minds a little bit. So first I want to say we're not going to take a break until we break out into the breakout. So if you need to take care of business, please do that. But I do want to take just this quick stretch break to get some blood flowing in our bodies and get our blood flowing to our brains, because we're going to be talking about some stuff you may not have talked about before. So just take a second, stand up, stretch. Move your body. This is good for learning. You get your muscles moving and your brain works better, I've heard. So shake it out. Okay. And when you sit back down, I'd like to take just a quiet second and ask you all to reflect for a minute about the organization or group or network you are here representing, and try to do something with, try to distill the problem that you're trying to work on at your organization into a few words, a couple sentences. Decrease homelessness, decrease obesity, something like that. If some organizations and networks aren't really problem focused, you're more focused on opportunities and assets, that's okay. If that's the case, just try to think of a problem that you have worked on before in the past. It's going to help as we walk through the examples that you have something in your head. So do that for just 1 second. And try to keep it simple too, because I know it's hard to distill it down into one sentence for some of us. So before I talk about the details of this category, I really want to take some time just to lay some groundwork and common language and framework out for you so that you all can get a better sense of how we see systems change, what we mean when we talk about systems and systems thinking. Some of you may have heard about it. Many of you may not have heard about it. This will be a very quick introduction. But it is really a lifelong kind of learning journey. So if you're interested in this type of stuff, we have lots of resources that we've curated. Some of them are in the grant guidance document. You can start clicking on those if you're interested. So this is just a quick level setting of the room today. So the first thing we're going to talk about before we even talk about systems change and all of that are just problems. So you all wrote a problem down that your organization or network is working on. It turns out that there are different types of problems, and we didn't really talk about this much until about the 1990s when the Cynefin framework was developed. Anybody familiar with the Cynefin framework? It doesn't look like, it's spelled like Cynefin, so it's a Welsh word. But so it was created by Edward Snowden at IBM. David Snowden, not Edward Snowden, David Snowden. Thank you. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. All right. Okay, so Dave Snowden created this. And what he said was there are different types of problems. There's simple problems. Now they call these obvious problems. Doesn't mean they're easy. What it means is that we can reasonably determine cause and effect. So we kind of have an idea what's causing. We think we know if we do this, something will happen. Kind of the realm of common sense in some sense. If you follow a recipe, you'll get a result. And there's tried and tested solutions that we can apply. So lots of simple problems in the world. Humans are master problem solvers. We solve probably hundreds of problems every day. You probably have already solved some simple problems on your way here today. There are also problems called complicated problems. So when Becky was talking about, oh, these are complicated, this is complicated, that's why I was laughing, because complicated problems, you might not know what's causing a complicated problem, but somebody probably knows. So there may be some expertise out there that you need to find. And with that expertise, you can probably figure it out, or that expert can figure it out. And most people agree on kind of the best way to figure it out. So not a lot of disagreement. So a complicated problem is sending a rocket to the moon. Very complicated, lots of stuff involved. But if you build one rocket and it works, you can probably build another rocket the same way and it will work again. So there's lots of complicated problems in the world as well. A lot of us deal with complicated problems every day too. But there's other types of problems. I'm going to skip down to chaotic. So everybody's familiar with that word, chaos. So chaos, completely unpredictable, something horrible's happened, maybe a natural disaster, and we just need to act. We need to kind of not plan, but we just need to go and figure it out. And it's an emergency, we need to act fast. But there's something in between chaotic and complicated, and it is complex. So we have a little "you are here" little pin in complex because this is the type of problem that this grant category that I am now privileged to oversee is trying to address. So these are problems where you can't predict the outcome. You don't know what's causing what. There's lots of different variables that may be influencing a particular problem, lots of forces interacting. You don't even really know how they're interacting. You just know there's lots of interconnected things that are making it very hard to see what's the right thing to do. So there's lots of disagreement in complex environments. You might think you want to do something one way. You might say, nope, I think we can do it this way. And honestly, both of you can be right in these environments. So it's not about finding the right way. And in these environments, the context is constantly evolving, constantly changing. The ground never seems to be still underneath you. And what's worked in the past, like the rocket, you may have done something one way to solve a complex problem. It's not necessarily going to work in the next complex environment. So we have lots of these in our lives. Raising a child is one that is used frequently here. So we all know that your children are all different. You can raise one way, and you have another child that's in the same family having a completely different experience, and you need to address that as well. So now seeing this framework, now I want you to look back down at your problem that your organization or your network or your initiative is trying to solve. And I want you to think, where would that problem fall, do you think? Are we talking about simple, complicated? So how many kind of wrote down a simple problem? No shame in that. There's lots of simple problems. It just means that, yep, okay, some simple problems. Great. How many wrote down something they would call complicated? And how many wrote down something that they would call complex? A lot of us, yep. So this is why we created this category, because a lot of social problems that we're dealing with fall into this realm of complex. So what were some of the things, if you want to just shout out, what were some of the problems that you wrote down? Eliminate child sexual abuse. Not simple, not complicated, definitely complex. Lots of variables to think about, right? Some other ones. Consciously embrace spirituality in daily life. Yeah. Complex and cool. I heard someone say cool. Great. What else? Couple more. Just shut them up. Okay, great. Quality of life for the frail and elderly and aging. Mm-hmm. Complex. Mm-hmm.
Get our region's individuals with mental illness and brain disorders into treatment.
Okay, individuals with brain disorders into treatment. Complex. Lots of different things to consider. Don't know the best way to do it. Yeah, great. Great. So, yeah, one more. Yes, we're going to talk about that. That's one of our examples, in fact. Great. Great. So the reason he did this was not just to show us that we have different types of problems, but to really say, well, have we been solving these problems differently? Perhaps there are different approaches if there are different types of problems. So when we're in a simple environment, we find the recipe. We find the best practice. We find the standard operating procedure, and we follow it, and we're going to get what we hope we're going to get usually. So baking a cake, if you follow the recipe, there's a chance you might not come out with exactly what, Kat did when she baked her cake, but you can be pretty sure that you'll get something looking like a cake if you implement with fidelity. So complicated is where you find that expert. This is the realm of consulting and consultants and expertise. So you find someone who's smarter than you, usually, and you analyze the problem a little bit. You look at data, and then you think, let's just create a plan, and if we implement that plan as we have it written, things will work out okay. So this is also, how many of you are familiar with adaptive leadership or have been through leadership training with Lucille? So technical problems kind of fall on this side. So adaptive problems on the other side. So just to throw that frame out to you as well. Okay, so let's see. in chaotic. We'll just jump to chaotic again. So this is the natural disaster. What you need to do is you need to start triaging, you need to follow your instincts, you need to act fast, and you need to stabilize things. So once you stabilize things, it's interesting, things are stable after a disaster. What doesn't usually happen very well is you need to go and reassess the problem at that point and think, what's the simple stuff that we can do now that things are stable? What's the complicated stuff and what's still complex about this? And continue to address those things. So in these complex environments where there's lots of disagreement, lots of interacting variables, very difficult to see your way forward, what do? And we're going to talk a little bit more about this in a bit, but we work with others. So we can't solve complex problems on our own as single organizations because we know that all of these factors are connected. All of these other organizations are also working on a similar, piece of the puzzle. So we need to work with them. We need to develop trust and a shared understanding of the problem. We'll talk more about a little bit about how to do that. We need to look beyond the symptoms. So we can't just keep treating the symptoms of these problems, but we need to look beyond, look underneath, and we'll talk about that too. And we need to experiment. So this is the realm of not a firm plan, but a lot of experiments with great intent, is what they say. So small bets, big intent. And you need to learn along the way and return that learning back to your system, back to your partners. Okay, so now I want you to think about the typical approach at your organization. Look at these approaches to the problems. Look at the problem you wrote down. How are you typically approaching that problem? Is there a match or a mismatch is the question. And there's no shame in mismatch because that's why we evolved at Rotary Charities, because we actually applied this to ourselves and we thought, if we're trying to really solve problems and not just treat symptoms, is there a mismatch in what we're doing? And there was. We were probably approaching most things as simple or complicated when we needed to be approaching them as complex. So anyone find a mismatch between their typical approach? Yeah. Okay, great. So we said we needed to evolve now that we were recognizing our environment as complex. So one of the things we did is reached out to a lot of folks, and probably some of you responded to this, and did a Changemaker survey. 660 some folks responded from the region. We asked a lot of questions about the operational and technical kind of capacity building that Becky was talking about that we used to focus on. And then we kind of opened up some questions in this realm about complex problems. And we wanted to see, is there the will in this community to do things differently and to try to solve complex problems and not just keep churning out the same problems year after year at pretty much the same levels over and over again. And so what do you think? So before I flip to the next slide, you think people generally wanted to solve these problems, these kind of complex problems? Yeah, like how can you disagree with that, right? Yeah, we need to. Yeah, so 94% thought it was urgent or very important that we work collectively, so not on our own, but we really work collectively to solve these complex problems. Now the next slide, or the next side then is, okay, so do we need to work differently in order to do this? And, the vast majority thought, yeah, we can't really do this in the same way that we've been doing things. We heard things like, we're working in silos, our problems are interconnected, but our work is not. And we're competing more than we should, and more than, now that we know we're all working on these same similar issues. So the will was there in the system. So then we knew we just needed to get out and start wading in and start doing some experiments, start training, start working with you all, and think about, what does it take? What's it take to work on complex problems? It takes a paradigm shift, a total shift in thinking, and it's called systems thinking. We will talk through what we mean by that. I apologize if you walk out at the end of the day looking like that chicken, because I think that kind of happens when you start to see the world in this way. It's like, whoa, and it's hard to unsee it. One of the coolest things that happens in my job now is I get calls often from people who say, wow, I was just in this meeting. They had been at a systems training, and all of a sudden I saw how everything was connected, and I approached it completely differently. And you know what? I can't even imagine how I used to do things. I can't imagine how I would have responded before. So that's really amazing to me. I feel like we're on the right track in this world. So, okay, so before we do systems thinking, what's a system? So we have systems all around us all the time. So a system is stuff. That's a very technical term. It's stuff. It's stuff. It's parts. And it's not just parts, but it's parts that are connected to each other. So like those Tinker toys. It's parts that are connected, and because they're connected, they're creating some sort of result. So we have systems that know that they're systems. So we have healthcare systems. Shout out some other systems that know that they're systems. So we have our bodies, we have our families, we have lots of systems like that. But when we talk about the systems that are creating the problems in our communities, absolutely though, school systems, right? The systems that know their systems usually use the word system in their title too. So that's a hint. We have justice systems. What else? Healthcare system. Did I hear something else? Transportation system, definitely. So those are systems that know that they're systems. Those systems could apply for this grant, sure. School system, intermediate school district, transportation system, healthcare system. But there's also these systems that don't know that they're systems. Their stuff is interconnected, but they may not act like it's interconnected. So any ideas? System that's creating homelessness, for instance. Lots of factors, lots of stuff. So things like policies and mindsets and programs. Community mental health. Okay, so a system that responds to mental health needs. Or are you talking about the organization, community mental health? Mm-hmm. Yeah, our organizations are all systems. Yep, good. The environment, who said the environment? Yeah, the environment, definitely a system, for sure. Yep. Pardon? Veteran issues, so the system that's creating trouble for veterans or problems for veterans or veteran services system, definitely, right.
Community resiliency is a system that we strive for in silos, but may not really realize in the community that it is a system.
Yeah, so, yep. I know people are defining resiliency in lots of different ways. That would be a big meta system, the system that creates resiliency within our communities. Mm-hmm. Social media is a system, yep. I'm just gonna grab my water here. Great. So, what's not a system? Pardon? Being. You're very philosophical. Yes. Being. Okay. Yeah. Just being. Mm-hmm. Yeah. So there's lots of things that aren't systems. The biggest thing to look for is this interconnection piece. So if the stuff isn't interconnected in any way and not influencing each other, so like all the stuff under my daughter's bed, like unless it's growing something, it's not really a system, right? It's just there, a pile of sand, things like that. But really when you start looking at things, a lot of things are systems. Football teams are systems. We're a system right now because we're influencing each other in this room, and there's a result. So these problems that we see in the community are these results, and they're not always what we want them to be, right? Nobody designed the system to, cause certain levels of homelessness or certain levels of health disparities. No one intentionally did that, but yet the way the stuff is interacting is creating it. So when you know you have a system and you're in a complex environment, complex problem, we use systems thinking. Who's heard of systems thinking before? It's been around for a little bit. Peter Senge, kind of one of the fathers of systems thinking back in the 90s, wrote The Fifth Discipline. Well, now it's being applied to these social problems, and it's really fascinating. And we're a little short on time, so I'm not going to go through all the details of this slide. But there's basically conventional thinking that says that the problems are out there, that we can find someone else to blame. it's in a part. The problem is in a part. If we fix the part, the whole will be better. That's conventional kind of thinking. If we have short-term success, we just need to do more of whatever we're doing, and then we'll have long-term success. And you need to do a lot, and you need to do it fast, and you need to act quickly. So that's kind of conventional thinking. Systems thinking over here is, the solution isn't out there, the problem isn't out there, it's in here. We're all a part of the system, all of us. If we're working to solve these complex problems, we are a part of the problem. And that's a little bit hard to accept right away, but it can be transformative, because the best place to start in changing a system, the easiest place to start too, is with yourself and the way that you see things and what you do. And instead of optimizing the parts, fixing the part, we look at the relationships between the parts. And this is the heart of it. And it's, if you go to any of these deeper systems thinking, systems practice workshops that we have listed in the guidance or on our website, that's what you'll really look at. You'll look at, well, what are the parts, and what are the relationships, and how do we rewire, restructure systems so that the result is different. So that is systems change. So the iceberg model is another great model. How many have seen this in some form or fashion? It's out there in a lot of different ways. Won't spend a lot of time on it, but I will tell you, events, that's what we can see happening every day with our eyes. We're reacting to events all the time. Events are the tip of the iceberg. What do they say, like 10% of the iceberg is showing and 90% is underneath? There's all this stuff underneath events that is causing that event to happen. So somebody is homeless, that's an event. What patterns or trends might have been causing that? But underneath patterns and trends is that system structure that we were talking about. So the way that things are interacting, the policies, the people, the mindsets underneath even structures. So the way we think about things is the deepest part of the iceberg. And that's where you get the most leverage in these systems change kind of projects, is changing the way that we think about things. So again, this is just a teaser to try to get to see if you might be interested in learning more about this. If you're already working in this way, this is just a reminder. I know some of you have seen this stuff before. So we're in a complex environment. We're using systems thinking. What do we do? What do we do? What is this all about? So systems practice is what this slide is about. This is our definition of systems practice here. So we believe when you are practicing to change a system, you're understanding the problem in the context. So you're looking at all of these factors that might be causing a problem in a new way. If we've been working in a field for a long time, it's the tendency to just think, well, we know. We've been working in this field forever. We really understand what's causing this problem. It's out here, and we just need those people to change. And if they change, or this organization does its job, then everything will be better. Yeah, right? It's very easy. It's very natural to do that, right? But we really need to look at that context and remember we're a part of the context. You can't do that alone. It's a team sport. There's lots of people in the middle. This is a collective intelligence endeavor here. We need to build the relationships and trust to see that challenge in its full. We'll never get a perfect picture, but we need to try to work with others to see how they see the problem as well. We all have our own perspectives on things because of how we've been raised, where we've been raised, our experiences in life. We need to let go of those in this first step so that we can actually try to move in the direction of someone else's viewpoint. Really quickly, I'll just talk, you all know those optical illusions, like the old lady, the young lady, and there's like a duck and I don't know, there's lots of them out there. So I think about those in this first step a lot, because one thing I noticed recently is that you can't see the old lady and the young lady at the same time. It is impossible to see both things in one of those optical illusions. I feel like the same thing applies here in our social systems as well. We can't truly see another's point of view and we're holding on really tight to our point of view. So I really think there's a key step we might be missing when we're asking others for their viewpoint, and that's kind of temporarily loosening your grip on your own so that you can actually hear what the other person is saying. Because if we're still like, no, it's an old lady, you are not, they're never going to convince you it's a young lady unless you let that go, blur your eyes a little bit. So once we've looked at the problem, once we have this visualization that does involve other people's perspectives and what might be causing a problem, these leverage points emerge. What a leverage point is a point in the system where if you tweak it a little bit, that it's going to change this and change this and change this and change that result. So that yellow box or the yellow circle that we're showing on the other slide. So again, there's lots of methodology and tools and things that you can learn in this space. This is just a teaser, but you find those leverage points and then you think, well, you start prototyping. Well, what might we do differently? What might you do? What might we do? Where you're working with others here, you have a relationship to take action on these leverage points, to try to move them, try to push them in a new direction. And then you develop these experiments and you learn and you return that learning back to the group and you keep experimenting. It is an ongoing process, okay? So this grant, whoa, we're finally back to the grant, is about number 3, okay? So we have seed grants, we have Changemaker Fellowships, we have learning opportunities that will help you with 1 and 2. If you've done 1 and 2 with others, then you might be ready for number 3, and that's where this money comes in. So, makes sense so far? I will take a breath and let you ask me questions. We have a couple examples. And I need a time check because I feel like we're way late on time. Okay. Okay. Yes.
So with this grant and this system change accelerator and the Changemaker Fellowship, do all of the collaboratives or all of the individual organizations that are working together must reside in your 5 counties?
No, I
Okay.
think if the result, I think the fiduciary needs to be from the 5 counties, correct? The fiscal agent, so it has to go through one organization.
Right.
Will get the money. That organization needs to be in the 5 counties. And
We should have a conversation.
okay, okay,
Because I think a case by case is better for that.
okay. So I think the most important thing is that the result will be felt in the 5 counties.
Right.
It could be felt in 20 counties, but it needs to be, yep. Okay, great.
So in the guidelines, it speaks about the match requirement. And I might be jumping ahead, and I apologize for that. I usually do, sorry. So the match, it talks about that all of the partners, so if it's a multi-county initiative, then each of the partners needs to have some sort of skin in the game. Can you speak what that might look like?
Okay. So there is a 10%, it's a smaller match requirement for this one. This is a little tricky, so tell me if this doesn't make sense. But partners, when we say partners, a partner is someone that's doing something. We call these actions, or you're developing basically a constellation of different things you're gonna do in this grant category. So if a partner is doing one of those things, so you may have partners that are in the system as a whole, then they're a partner and they should be contributing either cash or in kind so that it totals 10%. Does that make sense? So it's a little different than others. They don't each have to contribute 10%. They just need to contribute time or cash. Can be cash or in kind. Doesn't have to be time, could be space, could be something else.
So you can put a value to those.
Yes. And you know, an easier way to think of it when you get down to brass tacks, if another organization is getting money in the budget to do something, then they need to be giving something in return. Doesn't have to be, it just needs to all add up, all those to 10%. Okay, okay, cool.
I would suggest we skip this one and do the farm to school.
Perfect, this is in your guidance, you can just read it, great. Okay. And we could even talk about the learning steward in the breakouts too. So we have a video here. So anyone here from Groundwork? Yes, okay. So Groundwork came to a session probably 2 years ago now and said, I think we're doing this. I think that we are helping others to work in this way. And we had conversations and Yes, they are. So we asked if we could create this video maybe last year sometime to try to show what we mean when we talk about systems change. So this is about groundwork and their role in changing the farm to school system. It's about 5 minutes, and I hope this works.
Rotary Charities and the Groundwork Center for Resilient Communities present Farm to School, a story of systems thinking. Meet Earl. He's a farmer in northern Michigan. Meet Tricia. She's a second grader, also in northern Michigan. Now meet Lisa. She's the food service director who manages the kitchen at Tricia's school. Earl would like nothing more than to increase his sales to schools so he can help Tricia enjoy his healthy, local products. Tricia eats what her school provides, but doesn't know anything about Earl's food. Lisa would love to make Tricia a healthy lunch, but she has a tight budget and can't really afford it. But come on, it should be easy to make all three of them happy, right? Turns out it's more complicated than you might expect. Let's look at each person's situation. Earl can only grow so many products on his farm in order to remain profitable. He only has so much time in his day to deliver them. And also, when most of his products are at their peak, Tricia is on summer vacation. Lisa has a budget, and usually it's less expensive to buy processed foods from big distributors. Plus, the kitchen in Lisa's school doesn't have the staff knowledge or the equipment to cook Earl's food from scratch. Tricia likes to try new things, but sometimes she's picky. She hasn't learned that healthy eating can help fuel her day and be fun at the same time. And there are lots of foods from Earl's farm that she might think are, well, kind of weird. These aren't the foods she usually eats at home. These problems are all interconnected and require many steps to solve. And fixing one problem, like delivering Earl's kohlrabi to the school, could prove useless if Lisa's staff doesn't have the knowledge to prepare it, or if Tricia won't eat it because she thinks it's weird. How can these problems be solved? With systems thinking. Systems thinking is both a mindset and a process. It allows us to visualize the system that enables or inhibits the ability of our three friends to accomplish their goals. Once in place, we can identify the partners, tools, and resources that can be combined to bring meaningful changes. Now, meet the folks at Groundwork Center for Resilient Communities. Groundwork is a nonprofit that has used systems thinking to help partners solve these kinds of problems for decades. And frankly, sometimes that's how long it takes. To help Earl, Groundwork launched programs to teach farmers how to grow crops more efficiently and manage their businesses to support sales to large institutions like schools and hospitals. Groundwork helped other companies to help farmers like Earl distribute some of their fresh foods and freeze the rest so Tricia can enjoy it when she gets back to school. Lisa went to a conference hosted by Groundwork to learn more about costs and availability of local foods, then applied for grants that can provide budget support for purchasing local food, educating her staff on scratch food preparation, and upgrading the school's kitchen. In her school, Tricia has seen Earl bring new foods to the cafeteria so she could try them. Her teachers found fun ways to educate Tricia about local foods, like cutting up apples into fractions for math or writing recipes in English. And she shared what she's learned with her parents, so they can buy local foods too. Of course, all of these things are connected to larger issues: awareness, education, communication, school system budgets, including more farmers and more schools in the distribution network. And these things are connected to even larger issues: legislation, state education requirements, state budgets, and even big food companies who might not want Earl to succeed, at least initially. In seeing the connections between problems and identifying opportunities over time, Groundwork connected multiple organizations that helped Earl, Tricia, and Lisa to succeed. This is what systems thinking is all about: stepping back from the original problem and realizing that there are multiple factors that can help solve it. Clearly, a system this big doesn't change overnight, but this type of thinking is at the core of what Groundwork does. By convening many community partners in a regional network over time, you begin to see the system change. Farm to School is just one example of the way that Groundwork Center helps to shed light on the possibilities that systems thinking can bring us to help foster resilient communities where local economies thrive, institutions grow, and community members live healthier, happier lives.
And really seeing where the opportunities were and developing some new things, but it was a collective effort. So does that help show a little bit more about what we're talking about here, stepping back from a problem, looking at all of the interconnected factors, kind of finding those leverage points for change, and then working with others in an experimental way to change a system? Do you have enough of an idea so that you know kind of if you want to go to the breakout talking more about this or the breakout talking more about assets? Or what kind of questions do you have lingering? Okay. Yes. No. So this year we're doing one training session. So we used to do like 3 or more even, and we found that in the breakout sessions especially, some of the same issues were coming forward even in the systems change, like, oh, we want to work on Great Lakes health, and then the next time, oh, we want to work on Great Lakes health, we're like, we need all these people in the room at the same time so you can connect, like Becky was talking about. So yeah, right, yep. So feel free, I mean, we can do a pre-grant meeting even if it's just an exploratory kind of talk anytime. Yep, happy to. I love talking about this stuff. Happy to make time for a meeting anytime. Cool, thanks. So, in our old model, we probably would have funded the kohlrabi. Somebody would have come and said, hey, we need more healthy food. We have farmers growing kohlrabi. And we would say, great, here's a grant for that, and go for it. And then come back in a year and tell us how it went. And then they'd come back in a year and say, you know what, it didn't quite work. And we'd never really explore much deeper. But now, you can see there's lots of different factors that need to be addressed at the same time. All right, so we will talk, there is a requirement for learning. We'll talk about that in the breakout. So we already talked about matched, 150 total, so a little bigger pot of money. You have to have 3 partners at least from different organizations to apply in this category. Could be 1 to 3 years. And then that same process that Becky described for the assets category applies here as well. So deadline, same, early October. You'll know if you make it to the next round. Final notification, December 5th. And we can even talk about this. We'll talk about this in the breakout too. Oh, one thing I do want to mention. So for both grants, if you are in your budget directing money towards an organization other than the fiscal agent, so you're sending some money over here, this is a new requirement, but we need an MOU or a partnership agreement in the grant application as an attachment. We are offering a training around how to do that, and July 10th from 12 to 2, so it'll be a kind of bring your lunch kind of workshop. So we'll be sending out some more information about that, but just keep that in mind. So definitely applies to this grant because you have 3 partners that are doing something and receiving funding. May apply to the assets category as well. So anything you want me to hit before we? Okay, great. Yes.
I can imagine that some people, myself included, may not be ready to apply for a systems grant by August 26th.
Yeah.
Is this likely to be repeated in the future?
I sure hope so. repeated next year. We'll see. So we are learning. So there's a community of practice. If you get this grant, that you will join the others that also are receiving the grant, where we're doing a lot of learning and learning from each other and figuring out how to look at success, what success looks like. I kind of think of it like bifocals in these projects. So you need to keep your eye on that long-term goal of reducing homelessness or reducing obesity, that big problem, but that's not going to shift likely in the grant period. So we have to like be able to focus more closely on some things in the system that are changing. So hopefully we'll be sharing some stories soon about success, and our board will say, yes, we're moving forward, there's success, we feel good about this, and we'll be able to keep continuing this. So yeah, great. Okay, so Becky, real quick on seed grants and
So seed grants, these are flexible pots of money. You can apply for them anytime. They really are designed to get you ready for one of our bigger grant types, as I said earlier. There is a slight shift in what we've done in the past, and that is we have a recommended amount up to $10,000. We're finding that this particular category leverages a lot. So if you have something that's just such a great idea, but you need a little bit more than 10,000, let us know. We'll talk about that. So I'm pretty excited about, being a little more flexible there. The seed grant requires a 25% match. Again, it can be a mix of cash and in kind. And we accept these all year long. So as long as you get them into us by the 15th of the month, our board will consider it the first Thursday of the month. Couple of exceptions. They're not going to meet on July 4th, just saying. Okay. So this requires a pre-grant conversation as well, so we can talk about that. So anybody here have received a seed grant before? I know Abby has. Pam, Gaynell, yes, great, good. Was it helpful? Yes, yes. We find that this leverages just so much in the way of not just funding, but really expanded learning and great design. So any questions on seed grants? So if you're just interested in a seed grant, go to that bigger category you're interested in, whether it's assets or systems change. So just a quick, if you want to get ready, you're ready. The one thing we would love to see is if you're working with a consultant, if you have their scope of work, that's really helpful, and there's a place for you to attach that. It gives us a deeper feel for what you're hoping to accomplish. Changemaker Fellowships, I'm just going to run through this for you. Is that okay? Yeah. The Changemaker Fellowships is a new grant program. We initiated this last fall, and it's awesome. This is modeled on, we have some colleagues at the Bush Foundation in Minnesota, and this is modeled on one of their programs that's worked just brilliantly for them, and we're just starting to see some of the impacts. But basically, it's up to $20,000. You can apply for it anytime, same sort of thing. 15th of the month, it'll be considered by the board. And it's to do a deep learning that has sort of a little broader impact. So you can't go to, if you're with the Big Brothers Big Sisters organization, the national convention, to learn about Big Brothers Big Sisters, right? It has to have some kind of shareable information that you can come back and teach. So one of the requirements is you got to come back and tell us what you learned. So the other option here is to bring in a group that you are really dying to work with. So the two examples we have two that we've funded since last fall. One is Josh Stoltz at Grow Benzie. Raise your hand if you know Mr. Sunshine. Yeah, he's so connected. And Josh is actually studying with an international group on systems. So it's the Forum for Our Future group. and he's working with a small cohort of people from all around the world on systems change. And so if you didn't get his video blog, he did like a video blog during the experience. He's been to the UK, he's been to Russia, and we're actually, Freya's been really working with Forum for Our Future, and she's bringing in their some of their learners here in July, right? Or this summer. Yeah, early August. So we're providing a field experience for those folks. So it's just a really great connection to do some wonderful learning and systems change. The other one we did was with United Way, and their area that they're working on, is it poverty reduction still, or have they tweaked it? Social determinants of health. And they're bringing in David Peter Stroh, who just left last week. We had him here for an intensive 2.5-day training for the community. And he's going to be working specifically with a small group of folks there working on social determinants to align their activities within the system. It's a special process they use. So that's an example of this we need two-way learning. So we're sending people out, they're doing this expedition, they're coming back and they're helping us understand, or we're bringing in, I hate to even use the term expert, but somebody who knows a lot about a certain area. So questions about Changemaker Fellowship. I think the other thing here that's pretty cool is you don't need a match. We should probably put that on this slide. We really want you to learn. So, and you can use the money for travel, having someone sit in your seat when you're gone, tuition. So it's really broad and it's international. No questions, huh? Will you be our next Changemaker Fellow? Yeah. Depends. Yeah, depends. Case by case basis again. Yeah, I would not say no. But we want to make sure that we distribute it. Yeah, exactly, Chelsea. Great question though. So just if you've identified a breakthrough learning opportunity, let's talk about it. If you have a sponsoring organization that meets our criteria, so we can't give money to individuals. So we gave the money to Grow Benzie, we gave the money to United Way. But you know what? If you're like on a board of an organization, so the receiving entity has to be in our criteria. So local units of government, nonprofits. And then how you want to share what you're learning. And again, pre-grant meeting. And depending on the grant category, you'll meet with Freya or me. There's some cool stuff in here that you can look at. Just examples of what we've done. Grant criteria. Okay. Last thing we're going to talk at you about. Sorry. The grant criteria, this is what you're going to be shaping your proposal around, so listen carefully. This is also, it's more than just grant criteria. These criteria are the heart and soul of our organization. These are things we deeply believe. These are things that we are trying to practice and learn more about internally and in community. So as we think about these different grant criteria, there are 6. One is inclusive, and we have little taglines for these, so they're easy to remember. Nothing about me without me. And so really trying to include the people who are most affected by whatever problem you're working on. And those that have the most opportunity to affect change within the system. And I'm just going to kind of breeze through these because they're in your packet, and you're going to see how the questions relate to each of these criteria. Collaborative. We've always asked people to be collaborative, but this is really a deepening definition of what we mean by collaborative. So if you can't read this, it says, do what you do best and connect for the rest. And we're stronger and smarter together. So it can take a lot of different forms. Freya talked about a memorandum of understanding or a partnership agreement. We just want to see some sort of formal agreement if you are deeply partnering with others. resourceful. This is this gets at, you know, and we've always asked for leverage, right? We've never paid for 100% of anything. We're doing that a little bit now, but we really want to know what other resources you're bringing to your particular project. So whether it's a capital project, what other money are you bringing? Do you have in-kind volunteers that are designing a building or something like that? In the system space, it's really about, it's not just about the money. It's money, yeah, but it's also, hey, I've got a meeting space we can use for free. Or I have a copier. We can use our copier. I'll do all the printing. You do the design. So how, as you're collaborating, how are you also bringing what you do best to the table to share? So reflective is our fourth criteria. And what we know about this work is that we're constantly learning. And you can't learn if you're not taking time to sort of reflect and understand what's happening in the system, and beyond that, what's happening internally. Not just with your organization, but with yourself. How are your mindsets shifting? And really taking time to spend that kind of think time and reflecting time in your projects. So learn from looking out, around, and in is our little tagline there. And it's really, learning is really part of the work. It's integral to the work, and just making space for that learning to happen and reflect on. Adaptive is criteria number 5. So once we've reflected and learned, how are we applying it? How are we changing what we do? So take action on what you learn, and just understanding how we're going to flex and adapt to what we're seeing in the system or on the project. And finally, aligned. See and situate your work in relation to others. And this gets at that connection piece. Everything's connected, as Freya talked about, especially in systems work. So really working in a way that aligns your activities with what you do best in that system in relationship to other people. So that is the speed course and criteria. And now it's time to get up and move around. So I have a question. How many of you want to have a conversation with Colleen and I about assets? All right, good. How many of you want to talk with Freya and Tori about systems change? Okay, pretty even distribution. I think systems change there. Okay, so systems change. How many don't know where they want to go? All right, all right. Yeah, let me say this. If you are a Rotarian investigator, I would love for you to go to the systems breakout, please. And if you're really just flip a coin if you really don't know, okay, for the other folks. The systems change folks are going to be in the boardroom. Freya will lead you down there. So grab some more food, get some coffee refills, and head down there. We have till noon, so we'll let her rip. Yeah, thank you very much for coming if I don't see you.